What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today we need to take a look at the top 10 trading card games, the top 10 collectible games. To be fair, one of them isn't actually a trading card game, but we'll be alright. That are out at the moment. According to the lovely folks at ICV2, they do their list every 6 months, and look, I need to bear in mind here, and you need to bear in mind, this is not perfect information. This is the best list we generally tend to get, but it's US focused. It is based on interviews, etc. It's not just a compilation of published data, which would be ideally what we would have. It is, however, a very good look at which are the best TCGs at the moment in terms of sales, and it is better than a lot of the other information we have. So I need to start off saying that this is very much imperfect, but this is still very, very good. Now, one thing we need to bear in mind, and this is not changing anytime soon, Pokemon is number one. And Pokemon will remain number one. There is no real chance Pokemon gets dethroned anytime soon. And when we talk about trading card games, people seem to not realize quite what a juggernaut Pokemon is. People seem to think that Magic is a bigger game than Pokemon, and honestly, the idea that Magic is a bigger game than Pokemon is kind of laughable. You see, people make arguments about player base, and you can make that argument all you like, but it's a very awkward argument to make. Like, are you just talking about attendance at large-scale tournaments? In which case, yes, absolutely, Magic inarguably wins. But if we're only looking at attendance at large-scale tournaments, that's really looking at a very, 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 like, it's a section of a section of a section. And if we try looking at overall player base, and I've tried, believe me, it becomes nearly impossible to actually figure that out. Because a lot of Pokemon players are playing at home with their families because it's skewed towards a younger audience. So, yeah, the only objective measure we have for trading card games is sales, and Pokemon is miles ahead. And when I say miles ahead, I really do mean miles ahead. So back in 2017, I found this article the other day that basically said that Pokemon had 82% of the European TCG market by itself, and every other trading card game shared the last 18%. Yes, including Magic. And I know that's Europe, but there's no real reason to believe that other territories would be vastly different. Now, since 2017, we have seen a gigantic, and I mean gigantic, jump in sales of the Pokemon TCG. According to the lovely folks over at Poker Guardian, just one example, over 18% of all Pokemon cards ever sold were sold in the year 2022, that fiscal year. 18% of the lifetime sales of the game in that 1 year. So when I say that it was 82% of the market in 2017, it's almost certainly grown quite significantly since then. When I say Pokemon is number one, I don't mean it's just a little bit ahead. I mean in sales, there is nothing which is even remotely close, and I really do think people drastically underestimate quite what a juggernaut Pokemon is. Now, looking at ICV2's charts here, their rankings, Magic is number one in the hobby channel. That is basically your sales at game stores, and that shouldn't really surprise anyone. But again, if you're thinking about overall sales of games, do you think more are sold in mass market, your supermarkets, etc., or in hobby stores? It's not even close. So yes, Magic is number one in the hobby channel. Pokemon flip-flop a little bit here. But overall, oh yeah, it's Pokemon by an absolute country mile. And I need to just get this out there. It is not even close. Pokemon is number one. And Magic's number two, and Magic's not going anywhere. Magic is still a huge game. It is the original TCG. If you look at big tournaments, it has the highest player base. Magic is still an absolute gargantuan game. It is a huge game. It's quite a bit below Pokemon, but there's no way Magic is moved from number two anytime soon. Now, YuGiOh at number three is a weird one, because there was that brief period where in hobby stores, not mass market, just hobby stores, Keyforge actually jumped it, and it was only for 1 6-month period, and it was only in hobby stores, not in mass market or overall, so we need to bear all of that in mind. But YuGiOh was very briefly potentially vulnerable to Keyforge here, which I do find kind of interesting. But it's going to take something along those lines here, because, make no mistake about it, once again, this is one of those games that is very hard to supplant. So we've got the same 1, 2, and 3 that we would generally expect. What's in at number 4? The One Piece TCG. And this is what I've been expecting to happen for a little while. One Piece wasn't in at number 4 the last time ITV2 did their list. The last time ITV2 did their list, now this was fall 2022, so One Piece was very, very, very new, had huge supply shortages, etc. It came in number 6 in the Hobby Channel, and it came in number 5 in terms of overall. Essentially what's happened is, in the past 6 months, it's jumped ahead of Digimon. And this is something which we honestly should have been expecting. And the reason we should have been expecting is, it's just selling like an absolute powerhouse. Outside of the big 3, and again, the big 3 are the big 3 for a reason. Outside of the big 3, One Piece, if you've been paying attention to the market, and I really have, it has clearly been the story for the past year since it launched. Not quite a year even. It has clearly been the big game in terms of new and hyped and all of that. But we've not had a really fair look at how well One Piece has been doing, because, you know, especially when you look at Romance Dawn, the first set, cannot stay in stock. Every time it launches, it just immediately sells out. Keeping that set in stock is pretty much impossible. This is, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but it takes time to catch up with, unexpectedly big. Bandai could not have predicted that the game would be this big. And the thing is, I hear people saying quite a lot like, why didn't they just print more? If you overprint a new game at the beginning, expecting record growth, and you don't hit record growth, well then all of a sudden the game fails instantly. You cannot print like it's going to be an absolute juggernaut powerhouse at the beginning, because doing that is a way to basically say, unless we see just ridiculous growth from the outset, this game will instantly fail. Like Digimon did very, very, very well at the beginning, and One Piece has even been outpacing Digimon in terms of early sales, and it has now jumped above Digimon. One Piece, expect it to be doing well for a long time. One Piece very much looks like it's going to stay. One interesting thing, and it's way too early to talk about this yet, of course, Lorcana is not on this list because Lorcana has just launched. How big could that be? And I just want to point out, the next time ITV2 do their list, it's going to be fall 2023. We are not going to get a proper look at Lorcana sales on that list, because Lorcana, just like One Piece, cannot keep stuff in stock right now. So whatever we get in terms of the sales for that, it is going to be underrepresented because they've got massive stock problems right now, just like One Piece had. But as I've told you all in the past, Digimon had big stock problems. They're pretty much resolved. One Piece did. They're pretty much resolved. Lorcana does. It will get resolved. And then Digimon comes in at number 5. Mostly. Digimon, weirdly enough, in the Hobby Channel is down at number 9 underneath Weishwartz, Flesh and Blood, and Vanguard. But Digimon is still number 5 overall and number 5 in terms of the Hobby Channel. On the website, IC2 have actually labelled the mass as overall and the overall as overall, but it doesn't matter. They're both exactly the same, so it really doesn't matter. Digimon is number 5 overall. It does lots of business in your big box stores. It is actually being outperformed at hobby stores, like I say, by Weishwartz, by Flesh and Blood, by Vanguard, but it's still doing very well. And this is a little bit of a trick for you. Look at the top 5 games. They all do well in the mass channels, at your big box stores, your supermarkets, etc. That is why Keyforge never really had a chance, because it never saw many sales in the big box stores. But Lorcana has a chance to be absolutely gargantuan, because Lorcana is going to do big business in those shops, and the top 5 do business in those shops. Rounding out the list then, I want to give a shout out to My Hero Academia, coming in at number 10 for Jasco Games. I am a big fan of that game. And look, if you can look at the channel, I have done card reveals for them, I've done sponsored openings for them, etc. So there is an element of bias here potentially. I'm admitting that right at the beginning. But I just really like this game. I think it's a really good game. I'm a big fan of it. And it's clearly a smaller game, right? It's clearly not got the same level of hype and sales and all behind it as some of the big games on this list. I don't think that's an unfair statement to make. But it is a good game, it's got a strong license behind it, and I really do think this one's going to hang on for a little while. It's going to be a fringe top 10 game sitting down at the bottom. It doesn't really have much of a chance to jump ahead of some of these other games on the list, but it's hanging on as a top 10 game, which, I mean, put it this way, Final Fantasy TCG, that's another game I absolutely love, but the reason you don't see me covering it much on this channel is because there just really isn't a huge amount of interest. And that is actually kind of sad for me, because it's a really fun game, but it is not a top game, and it's honestly not particularly likely it ever will be again, which makes me genuinely sad. Also, as a little side note here, have you all heard that Magic the Gathering is doing a Final Fantasy TCG set? That is not good news for the Final Fantasy TCG. I don't think so anyway. Like, can you imagine One Piece doing a Magic the Gathering set? They would say, no, our game's doing really well. We want to focus on our game. So that's something which I am, shall we say, slightly worried about. And then the rest of the list, you've got Weiss Schwarz, you've got Flesh and Blood, and you've got Vanguard. And what all three of those really have in common is they are not the big, they're not going to be top 5. And Flesh and Blood had a very good start, but you got to remember Flesh and Blood does not have a license behind it. And, you know, the games that break into the top 5, like One Piece and Digimon, they tend to be based on a license. Lorcana's got a very good chance to do so. But again, that is based on a license, like a million different licenses, honestly. So these games are all doing well. Weiss Schwarz, of course, based on many licenses. But the point I'm making is these are all games that sell well in hobby stores, have dedicated player bases, but are very unlikely to really be top 5 games in the long run. Flesh and Blood, because it's very competitive focused and not based on a license. It's doing very well, but that is not the remit for a top 5 game. And Weiss Schwarz and Vanguard have always been that little bit smaller, but they're still hanging on very nicely. And for me personally, you know, I did some stuff with the Avatar set for Weiss Schwarz, which was awesome. That was also sponsored, so, you know, again, please bear that in mind. And there's a Guilty Gear Strive set, which is coming later in the year for that, which I am very excited for. But even then, you know, I'm a huge fan of Guilty Gear and Weiss Schwarz, and I think this is going to be a really fun set. Does your average person get super excited about that? My answer is, bit of a niche fighting game, going to be a good set, going to be one I'm very excited about, but is it going to move the needle for your average fan? I'm not so convinced. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. Big change in terms of One Piece becoming a top 5 game and sitting up at number 4, crucially in the hobby channel and the mass channel. So it's being played as well as collected. And then Digimon holding on quite nicely, and My Hero Academia propping up the bottom of the list, which makes me personally very happy. But now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to hear from you guys. Which of these games do you play? Which are you excited about? How well do you think Lorcana is going to do when it launches? Go nuts in the comment section, but be nice! And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi. That's where we talk about all kinds of card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCGradio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts, and all kinds of fun things. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching Wasi Plays.